Hello, species value nature system. This is regarding tricks everyone falls for. For example, regarding logic. I'm not a doctor, not a police form, not a criminal. They're recorded with crime methods. For example, everyone misses. Since founding, we have had obligations to have free speech of equality of fact treatment nature forbid per convictions forced offensively with passions, like for example regarding the Civil War. Now, see, for example, these people don't realize this. Everyone doesn't. But then, for example, if you question, they question people about things in history. You know, who were the generals who were some of the generals in the Civil War? For example, was a question I was just asked on Facebook to join a group. I said Lincoln and Lee and Grant. I don't know if it was Grant or not. Now, see, even if I know that or not, the most important, I could still know more than the person, and everyone can know more than the person who's an expert on American history. You can't judge someone's intellect by that, but they're doing stuff and pretending that's the only way they know because they're tactically pseudo educated. And they're also involved with criminality with that. And it's also exploited not just there, but with lie progressions from these database relationships groups. For example, then they're forcing debate. In other words, we didn't have liberty. All you have to understand understand history better than people with knowledge, people with the most knowledge who are getting over on everyone because they're victim predators about American history. For example, is that Marbury versus Madison and the nature of the identity thefts, the tortures, how they didn't have free speech, all those ways. Our founding fathers, James Madison, that identity of the ground relationship, George Washington's identity of the ground relationship to Connecticut right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War with the French general. That's what you have to know to interpret anything else correctly. See, but that's not allowed understood because we still have fact cheaping nature. Each age of fact cheaping nature is forced to collusion with the sensibilities, forced valued, not just forced, but forced valued. Each age of fact cheaping nature that left that those criminal insidiousness natures of treatments of positive sub rosa. You can't defend that us at the surface value of the Constitution at the same time. You can't defend a quality of fact treatment nature capable of speaking for morality, but anyway, but valuing already facilitated means to exploit database relationships, interbranches individually grouped and together in collusion what it stayed originally and still sustained to all areas, maintain the same outcomes, blame the other things others themselves. So, in other words, understanding Marbury versus Madison properly and the identity thefts and fact cheating nature slavery of our founders actually recorded properly, that's an organized crime conversation. And that shows that people who would pretend that the Civil War means what it doesn't, in other words, that pretend that liberated slavery, that was one part of an organized crime entrenchment that had everyone fact cheating nature slaves. Built also to be forced, sustained pseudo care, standing criminal and seditious natures in relationship, valuing it because that's the nature of what nature itself demonstrates for those nature of values nature systems entertained. You know how many crimes were sustained with natures of industries associated with slavery? And that's against everyone. See, because if you hold it as slavery, just because that's a fact cheaping nature racket, in other words, they built Miss Prisian to do that, to value roles like that. In other words, a whole bunch of fake sides, fake difference, fake sides of correlation nature's trinity, fake middle, physical delusions, identity of the ground, relationships to quality of fact cheaping nature, using premises treatments, like in other words, oh, because someone knows what general was there, there's a civil war, 1860 to 1865, still entrenched, and today recorded. We have the CIA, FBI, their family members, involved in criminally foreign influence with a whole bunch of other nations using the identity of the ground relationships, anticipated criminal uses of them, keeping those identities of private and interbranch originally and still maintained using progression cover-up methods, exploiting. They have all kinds of sub rosa statutes only standing because they're being valued because of crime methods being valued, because they kept needing to hide lie progressions, needing to hide finite, active, and progressive lies. The branches of government, because that's what they built them as originally only capable of being, and blaming out other things, others themselves, like witch trials. They can't. They don't have the integrity to handle the organized crime conversation that was about. They don't have the integrity to have the organized crime conversation that forsaken still Native American rights and time and nature is about, regardless if they agree with it or not. I mean, who do you know? So they agree because your nature agrees. This is a negative value nature. This is a negative relationship to nature. So, and they have all kinds of physical delusions and criminal foreign influences with their theories offensive. So here's a counter-offensive hyper volume theory. We're going to force response because they're not following mandated law this way, and they're spreading rumors offensively through time. We have some bad people before they even get there, and then with these triage places, and all associated with psychology, interstates, sickly distinctly intercities, sickly non-distinctly the same way in the states. Each nation has, now we have a whole bunch of nations with psychology with the same rackets and fact treatment nature rackets against their own, because these are value nature treatment systems. Where and how our fact treatment nature is to discern why and how we're fact treatment nature. So they can't separate them. This is an identity of negative value nature progression that modern nations are in. They can't defend group the whole bunch of nations at the same time. They're valuing their contrast because force each position of the fact treatment nature, leaders, grouped, into individual, all forced to be pseudo identity roles against integrity coming up from beyond everything, beyond the republic, beyond ourselves, while as our value. This is what the A and the W and associated with the Hill is revealed to teach. Now one must preach, but what it is by using what is true always and as exception too, which is here and where and how every value is valued where we are fact treatment nature distinctly from it, while it is at the same time. I just remind, because the greater identity nature is instantaneous relationship to itself, but it's simultaneously three distinct natures of itself that are holding back part of itself. And so it is like it's like a delay. It's a quality of diffusion that we are in relationship to this identity that logic has inherent to it. Identity of a value nature system. Oh, my friend, new easier moderation, please. The all it's says press the alt key to pause the chat, then point the message to delete it, block the user, or take other actions. Let know how. I don't want to block him. I'll say hello. It won't. It says I'll just say got it. I don't know why there's a. Okay, so I forgot what we were talking about, but in other words, psychology is with these rackets with fact treatment nature. What is positive or not? They're obfuscating positive scores intersciences as pseudosciences, and as sensibilities maintained, measured in relationship to means to get over on each age of fact treatment nature needed that because we have states and areas criminally foreign influenced. Everything. All victims, but all victim predators justification only capable of fathoming having been and being invested to it. the way shown, and which is wrong. So in other words, they if we value, so I'll make another video on, but that's the point. The ground value of James Madison, Marbury versus Madison, and of George Washington with Connecticut, having left the see, where positive will only stay positive unto itself. That's positive. To discern where there was overt organized crime breaching method, positions, and uses of that with the fact cheating nature, which is this course is about. I'm not a lawyer, not a police form, not a criminal, not a doctor. The lawyers are also recorded, involved, used for a method, types of law, types of fact cheating nature, recorded, left, valued, criminally foreign influenced, and delusions wrought, each of the sciences. See, now this attaches to the surface value of the Constitution as a nature of volume, increasing as our value, positive or negative in relationship to what is actually reality always, which is different. No, just because it was reality always, when they're sustaining they're really crazy on every color. In other words, that's why they had roles with everyone juxtaposed, chained to each other, being whipped. You know what I mean? As those people, disgusting. When you see pictures of that on the people's backs, you can't believe someone survived that. And back in the day, many pray. So we're still not. We're still in many ways getting worse than back in the day, while things get better. Because we're in the we're still, we have self-valued here and there. Modern nations were grouped, was made for self-value, and no one's realized that though. Because what does that? Keeps states and areas criminally foreign influence valuing each age pseudo positive. They, interbranch in the background needing to stay pretended integrity by using such tricks. In other words, we were still in a breaching and victims of an entrenched breaching organized crime method, using human fact cheating nature in relationship to all that for sustain, not letting free speech by offensively pretending to have conversations with people in the background, pretending it's about because someone didn't know what general was in a war, which was sick to even need to have and in other words, to describe it's what's even sicker is not describing it that way, pretending it's just about North and South. They left out the slavery in the North. That didn't end it just because that was, and they left out the slavery. That was every color. See, this has black and white fact cheating nature, different ways fighting to defend their native fact cheating nature in relationship to what never liberated anyone, let alone Native American rights, let alone which is the value of and as our species value as the volume forsaken most because of color and because of geographical still per the organized crime method that our agencies in our branches of government worse than valued, not having understood. They're obfuscating the organized crime method that use zoning laws, use the pathology of infrastructure, of means to it only capable of staying semi-unsafe, worse than that. Roles where they could exploit database relationships, identity of the ground, relationship to Egypt. There's a whole bunch of boys that recorded, confessed, and she demonstrated. I never had a conversation with her. They set up to try to make it look like that, but probably filmed it with a Perone family, a Danielle Perone. In other words, these are people, men and women, involved with these Department of Transportation, both the campuses, from the FBI director Robert Luskin down, involved with crimes with Mueller, other agencies with a whole bunch of group nations. Now, this is in relationship to how they justify natures of positive treatments that are only positive in relationship to the contrasts of wars, not by accident existent, only because of the nature of problems, because of these private things value that you can't value and defend us at the same time, let alone even have understood our history true. So it's George Washington, James Madison, our founder before that. And when that's not true, George Washington was first president anyway. Because the sequence is true both times at the same time. Well, we'll come to this because we're going to have to take hyper theory because they're not following mandated law. They're in the background pretending things are offensive. These are people using the sensibilities of online platforms regarding the behavior of others. So they can pretend they're criminally pretending they believe all that courts could solve with, in other words, what they're involved with recorded crime methods. They're not letting mandated law follow. So pretend not to realize they're pretending people should sue them, but they're forging names and switching names. They're lying about our behavior and about the substance of our communications online. For example, in life, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. You have to understand what they're doing, how they're making the organized crime method not understood by people with terror methods, sickly non-distinctly in the suburbs, as the same ones sickly non-distinctly in the urban areas where there are the most shootings. This is a maintained outcome. This is tied to all the criminal uses of the identities of the ground on and off those locations, like the campuses, like the shared policing of stores, like the relationships that people have speaking through others with this. That starts why this is overt and subtle at the same time. Even though it's overt, we're not being allowed to report it. So that's how I know, and that's how we could all examine. In other words, how simple American history is to tell in relationship to logic. All exceptions are recorded, criminally exploited, and this shows how exception nature is the goal to stay maintained, exploited, because we have all victim predators, because we're in an identity of negative value nature progression since semi-ancient time. This maintained by a breaching organized crime method, all standing criminal insidiousness nature. You can't legalize that. Victim predators. They explain to you their morality. In other words, how they justify things. See, because they were only capable of doing the same way the witch trials. Same way with you see people frustrated against the police and police frustrated against the people at the same time, because all the identity of the ground, especially grouped, they're misprision, and then they're needing to hide. How that's effective specifically to make them need to hide things down the road, and then value crime method collusion, like the method of pretending to believe people are. You can measure their intelligence this way or that way. We still have those experts on intelligence involved with all natures of crimes against each age of fact shaping nature, involved with child offenders to hide their life progressions, and with women through time involved with the child sex offender crime rules, women judges, because they're crime methods with them, forging names, switching names, using cult physical culture to maintain our actual culture is positive, also positive onto itself, course from being discerned and valued and utilized. There are proofs that this is exactly what St. Nicholas was trying to help the church get us to someday be able to have the integrity to have someone have free speech to discern, to show how mandated law is recorded, not let follow. how they're starting fights, why they're pretending to be about peace. Because at the same time, how their roles are sustaining sick aggressions on all each age of fact should be nature, each difference, each individual, grouped slash sex, that's ages, groups, areas, the families. That's to see the group nature of volume. That's to see if this identity of relationship to itself. People like offensively pretend they're about values. They need to pretend they have to areas. A whole bunch of people motivate, juxtapose all kinds of different motivations, needed to pretend to be about positive. Through time, when someone needs to demonstrate which is every moment, but they never let it done. Proper treatments of each science. We have pseudosciences. We have physical delusions regarding the integrity of market positions, force here and there, never liberated. They're pretending they don't understand that because they came through sciences abridged, ground rules with a bridged constitution surface value, and this is the way it's going to generate in relationship to itself. This is self-generating. The identity of logic's value, our nature of volume as value. These are extortion methods, intercampuses. Whole bunch of people associated with a Leahy family. So I never had a conversation with him. He had whole fake conversations with me, forged names of doctors and stuff like that. So he had communications with me. He's recorded and involved with a whole bunch of natures of federal crimes, predicate acts, sequence shifts, identity thefts with federal criminals and with their kids through time, with database crimes, with his own kids too, a whole bunch of people tied to him, and with their co-defendant in a case, and one's coming, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. See, but we need the attorney general and the Justice Department and the attorney generals are already long time self-valued roles with all the criminality with psychology. Real sick with triage relationships and with not letting people use their speech calmly to defend themselves against gun crimes and bug spray and extortion methods. See, because we have criminal uses of these campuses from off them. And they're doing it because they're maintaining needing to do that and pretend for other motivations because how they kept criminally needed to hide life progressions. This is why we have a whole bunch of nations grouped individually together, shared policing of our kids and things like that on off campuses. And then those are people facilitated as people that don't even know each other. In other words, the motivations to further life progressions time, even preemptively cultivated from base propagated already appreciating that. Was we have even identities of the ground being exploited. So we need to have mandated law followed, and we need to have everyone understand this organized crime method that's not letting that's pretending people have mental problems. That's why the shootings. But those are the people recorded, maintained, consciously involved with exploitations of these areas with the shootings the most. But second, you have to understand how they're sickly doing it non-distinctly the same exact way in the suburbs. These are election crime roles. These are criminal uses of the FBI that makes them pretend to be against things that they know they're for to maintain that self-value. That's how they played them originally, still fake sophistication. So this is sophistication. Use them in other words. It means nothing until you live until you in other words if you can't make those distinctions about the difference between the North and the South and slavery. That was in relationship slavery. That was only in relationship to one part of slavery. They still didn't even liberate because they didn't do it fact treaty nature wise. They're still pretending that was a color thing. The reason it stayed a color thing is because nation state group fighting as natures of fact treatment nature in relationship to the contrast only positive in relationship to that, as standing criminal and citizens' natures. And that was invested that way by a breaching organized crime method. Forgiveness was for this, not to give up, but to force mandated law to demonstrate this, to force free speech to demonstrate this. They're starting fights and they're pretending. I don't care if I know, no, I'm not, in other words, I'm not mad at someone for doing that. But in other words, this is important because that's all you need to know is is about about what George Washington had to leave here and how and why he could only send me a cow to extort them. How the French general had to help. How they forced those crazy zoning laws with crazy slavery laws on everyone. That made the pathology of infrastructure we have now. Homes that are glorified now. How come we don't have enough space? Because we have what people agree to and even can fathom doing with space. Now, people have space will want to do something, but they can't focus. We're in a means they can't. We're in value nature systems that are tactically ulterior from the one that provides means from nowhere, which is what not just in with inventions work or not in relationship to, not just that they're positive or not further in relationship to it, it's self-generated in a way that connects with itself. If we can connect with itself with that nature of prayer, that is science, to working with these three natures of invisible but still discernible volume, the science of correlation, extreme. See, they offensively, because they have foreign and domestic military and collusion. So what are they going to do? Pretend they hate each other? And they're going to really believe that, and they're going to value that because they were facilitated needing to. Because what led up to the Trade Center attack was what was using them criminally since before our, since it was instituted. These are a trade center, trade. There is this relationship to agreements with medical policing and value, judicial value, in relationship to fact treatments with, medicines, things like that, things that are being used for great crimes and for where they're all fact treatment nature racket. When you're using color with the law, if you pretend, even if you believe that color means what it doesn't, you have physical illusions. See, but now to keep this not taught, to keep logic in the hands of people criminally foreign influenced, private, and all interbranches involved with that. And that's all shared policing, foreign and domestic. Russians, longtime criminals here and there against our own, they're against their own, with psychology, with crime methods, pretending people have conspiracy theories. But at the same time, they're forging names, switching names, stealing people's identities, having had that done with the campuses of those people, uses of their kids for such, juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises and policing of that undercover, all sick because they need that because these are fact treatment nature racket roles, keeping everyone standing criminal and citizens nature self-valued on mass scale. That way we're connected automatically. And valued not quality fact treatment nature, because when it comes down to the court, if you try to use quality fact treatment nature the way they have it set up, everyone will be in jail because, first of all, everyone's liars and pretending they're not offensively, and they pretend that's just life. Sick the same exact way the people were motivated to roles with witch trials, especially if it was made up. Slavery, especially this motivated to leave out this fact treatment nature slavery and identity thefts of our founders. They need that value to glorified, not demonstrated. Pretend. So in other words, all you have to understand is Marbury versus Madison. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. We have sequence shifting, database rackets. They're fake recording things, interbranch, forging names, switching names, because these are people using the identity of the ground as facilitated needing to, valuing it each age of fact treatment nature taken from the identity of the ground's nature of relationship to itself. And now this has to do with memory and the nature of child abuse is that is multi-front, peripherally, also horizontally, now just every age at the same time. This peripherally in relationship to how there are now natures of industries, identities of industries, and an identity of negative value nature progression where they're all connected. Boxings tells us things. Okay, thank you. Everyone got bored out. Whatever. It's serious. These are election crime roles associated with this, crime methods associated with this, because they juxtapose a whole bunch of other motivations, natures, needs, and interests to hide other natures of crimes, facilitated all, with and as the only people allowed to counter crimes. Then they use the word crime to keep people scared to say anything because they're using and they're pretending they're doing, we have real bad modern nations each side, each conviction nature, each fact achieving nature with their convictions. Now follow mandated law.